Luttrell?
Yes, we simply have a budget workshop this evening. Our Director of Finance, Mr. Doug Schwinn, is going to kind of walk us through our budget scenarios for fiscal year 24. And while no action will be needed during this workshop, once the regular meeting is called to order later, there will be a moment of time in the agenda where you will be asked to approve not our budget at all, not our mill rate, but just simply authorize placement of the notice that will go into the newspaper stating when our meeting will be, where people can come and speak if they want to about the mill rate and so forth, as well as the resolution. And he will cover all that. But at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed CFO, Mr. Doug Schwinn, and he will start providing us information, which he kind of whetted our appetite last meeting. He's going to continue on that with a whole lot more here over the next several moments. So, Mr. Schwinn, it's all yours.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to not take more than 2 or 3 hours. So, no, as I go along, please, if you have questions, yell at me. We'll stop and address them as we go, because I know sometimes you think of something, if you don't get it out immediately, it leaves you. So don't be afraid to stop me along the way. So, well, good evening, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of share the budget details with you. I did feel led to lead off tonight with the 2023 estimated tax notice. This slide isn't what you got in the mail, but it is a representation of what you got in the mail. So if you look at the numbers in blue, those may look familiar to you. I felt it was important to show what the county published, what we're going to talk about tonight in the notice of hearing, and then I've shared some extra kind of bonus information on the right with the appraiser's website. There was a comment I made last week about, or not last week, but the last meeting, that the revenue neutral rate that a lot of you are seeing in the mail would have our mill levy, the overall mill levy for a home, going down to 121.032. And I made the comment that I don't think it's been that low in the last 5 years. And so you will see the numbers to the right prove that point out. The overall mill levy for this taxing district, because there's 3 or 4 in our district, not everyone's the same, but you can see that it's been in the 140s for the last 5 years if you look at the totals column down towards the bottom. I did want to separate out in purple, that's us. And how it has changed over the years. I know it's confusing to people, you know, why is it so high? Why is it going to cost so much? I know with the notice, I had a couple people comment that they saw that 54% for the bond issue, 230 bond. And they're like, are my taxes going up 54%? I'm like, no. That was because, first of all, we estimated back in June before we even had budget software to put things together. And no, the actual number that we plan to levy this year is lower than what we proposed in June. Plus, it goes back to this whole concept of the 121 mills is based on us living off the same exact dollars we did last year. And I've got a slide here next that'll kind of go into that. It's in my mind, it's kind of built on a false premise, because nobody can live off the same dollars they did last year unless they're a rapidly declining district and they've let go of some staff and shrunk, maybe even closed a school, who knows what. But that's, in my mind, that's about the only way you can get by with the same dollars as last year. So you will see in the middle, there's our notice of hearing. What I will be asking you to approve to publish later on in the meeting is a mill levy that is 67.198. That is down from last year, which was 67.406. And you can see if you go back the last 5 years, what it's been. It's been in the mid to upper 60s. So any questions about the notice before I go to why I think the notice is flawed? Yes.
How is it calculated? How is the revenue neutral calculated?
Yeah, great question. They basically let's say last year we levied $10 million. Okay. We levied $10 million. And if you look at the actual column, that was 67.406 mils. Okay. So they're going to say, all right, what's it take to get $10 million this year? Well, with assessed valuation going up, you don't need as much mill levy to generate 10 million. And in fact, the revenue neutral rate would be clear down to 55.7 to generate the same amount of dollars as last year.
So revenue neutral means last year's revenue.
Last year's
not revenue neutral for this year.
What they mean to be revenue neutral this year, you need this, you're going to levy the same amount of dollars as you did last year, not mill levy, but dollars.
But it's still calculated on today's enrollment and all that. Is that the deal?
It's calculated based on the new assessed valuation. And that's why there's that huge swing in the numbers, is that we did benefit from a large growth in assessed value, which I have a slide on that. So as assessed valuation goes up, that means you can spread it around more and hopefully reduce the mill levy. But if you're just raising it just a little bit, then you can't be revenue neutral. I would venture to say across the state, as far as school districts go, they'll probably be less than 10 out of 286. It's just not possible for people to live off of last year's revenue. So great question. Any others before I talk about the flaws?
You go back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when it says a decrease of 10%, 10.745%, what does that include? What's that decrease on? Because the bonds are on, are increasing 16%, basically 16.845. And I understand there's things around that, but the decrease in 10.745%.
Yeah,
That's
expand
on that.
Great question. And that is based on what's being proposed for this year versus actual last year. So I kind of get away from the whole revenue neutral argument and say, okay, here's what that, and you'll see in that actual column, it was 29.698. And this year with the notice of hearing, that same number is 26.507, which is a decrease of 10.45%. Now, bond, you will see it is going up 16.845% compared to last year. Last year, we levied 17.708. This year, it's going to be 20.691. So when everybody got concerned when they saw that 54%, the true number as far as the mill levy, not revenue, but the mill levy is going up 16.845%. And then at the bottom.
On bonds.
On bonds.
Only.
On bonds.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we're levying to, and that's our debt. I mean, and I talk about this flaw is that, you know, when we issue bonds, it's 20 years. And so we project out what we need to levy in our bond levy to pay off our debt. So just because to be revenue neutral says we should take it clear down to 14.657, we couldn't begin to make our payments by doing that. We would fall short. So the 14.657 in the far left-hand column. So, and that is a major flaw in all this is that budgets aren't just put together looking at one single year. You're looking out 2, 3, 4 years going, okay, I've got 20 years of debt to pay off. What do I need to be levying so that mill levy doesn't start to go way up and way down? I did mention, you can go back last year and listen to the recording. We could have dropped the mill levy last year. We could have more than we did. But I said that wouldn't be a smart move because we would be sacrificing cash balances. And I'd probably be back in front of you this year saying we need to increase the mill levy. So my strategy's always been, let's try to keep that flat or declining and not play the yo-yo game. Go up 2 mills, down 2 mills, up 2 mills. A lot of districts play that game. But it also makes people mad when they do see a huge mill levy increase and are like, why are we needing this? Well, I'd say maybe poor planning. I try to keep it flat or going down if at all possible. So great question. Anything else on this first slide before I get into yep.
Why did we take capital outlay to zero but raise bond? And couldn't we level those two or no?
That is on the flaw sheet. Because in the notices that were printed, they break out capital outlay. But when you get your taxes in the mail, it doesn't break out capital outlay. So the numbers in yellow and purple, they show zero across there because your tax bill, when you get it and you pay your taxes, it doesn't break out capital outlay. And to me, that's just really confusing that the notices go out and they break capital outlay out, but what you get on your tax bill at home when it's time to pay your taxes does not. It's included in the 230 unified number. Great question though. And that's one of my complaints. So if there's any other, we'll get to the rest of the complaints. How about that? And if we need to go backwards, we can. Okay. Number one, this is the biggie. The revenue neutral rate is based on budgeting the same dollars, period. And who out there can live off the same exact money you lived off of a year ago? With a rapidly growing district, it's not even feasible. Nowhere near feasible. Just not possible. It's the reason why there's less than 10 districts that are able to do that. Okay. Number two, and this is I think whoever thought this crazy thing up did not realize that when they were putting the calendar together and requiring certain things to happen, that requiring us to give mill levies in June is flawed. I didn't even have the software at that time to even put a budget together, but we're having to give estimates to the county so they can get them published. So the timing of it is just terrible. And you got to be careful though, because if we would have published a more conservative number in June, and then when I did put the budget together, realized, oh no, we've got problems. We do need to levy 2 more mills. We would have been locked into the number we published in June. So back then I told you we're going to estimate high, and I did. It was a little over 2 mills more than what I thought I needed. And again, that higher number got published, makes it look like your taxes are blowing up, but there was a safety net in there just in case we did need to raise the mill levy. We're not raising the mill levy, but this whole process and the timing forces you to estimate high to protect yourself, because I can't suddenly come before you today and say, I've crunched the numbers and the only way we're going to survive is raising another mill. I couldn't do it. I'd be locked into whatever we did in June. Does that make sense? Okay. Third, and this is a biggie. The revenue neutral rate for the district is not the same as an individual taxpayer. They do an overall calculation. If we levied $10 million last year, here's what the mill levy needs to be this year to capture $10 million. But the individual taxpayer, some people's assessed valuation are going to be more flat. Some may go down a little bit, more than likely not, but some could be going up a huge amount. So their revenue neutral rate could be 119, could be 130, it could be all over the board. So individual revenue neutral rates are not the same as the one that's calculated for the district. You can do the calculations and figure out what your own personal one is. You'd have to look at, what did my assessed valuation do? How much did I pay last year in taxes so that I pay the same amount of taxes this year? It can be calculated, but there's a huge difference between the district revenue neutral rate and an individual revenue neutral rate. And let's be honest, we only care about what we're paying ourselves in taxes. We could care less what our neighbor pays for the most part. I mean, I hope they pay more so I can pay less, but we don't get too worried about everybody else. But when it comes out of our own pocket, that's the number we're concerned with. Okay. And number four, we kind of talked about this, is the numbers that went out in the notice are not formatted in the same manner as your tax bill. I think that's really confusing for people. And the main one is capital outlay. Capital outlay is not shown separate on the tax bill you get. It's lumped in with the USD230 unified. Okay. And then I hit on this a little while ago. You can have one crazy number that causes fear. I did take a call last week from a patron that saw that 54% and said, can you explain to me why it's going up 54%? And I walked him through it. He was very nice on the phone. And when I got done with him, he was like, okay, I understand it better. But for the average taxpayer, they're going to see that 54% and go, why is it going up 54%? And it's not. But unfortunately, this notice that went to everybody in the district, they see those numbers, it can cause panic right off the bat because it's basing it off of everybody, not just us, everybody living off the same amount. And if you go back to this slide, you can see past history that most of these entities, you don't see them making major declines in the mill levy. Some of them have gone down, some of them have gone up, some of them have done a little yo-yo up and down. So, you could look at Spring Hill Rec. They've been pretty much levying 3.05 mills the last 5 years. They've been very consistent. If you go up to Johnson County, they were at 19.02 5 years ago. Now they're down to they have declined to 17.77. So they've kind of had a downward trend, but not everybody does. And I know the city of Spring Hill, I think they had a hearing not too long ago or discussed their numbers. I think they were in a situation where they were likely going to have to raise the mill levy this year. And so keep in mind, this notice that went out lumps all of us together into one number. That 121 is all of us working together into one number. But unfortunately, sometimes others take the blame for us, and sometimes we take the blame for other people because people only look at the grand total, the 121. Is that helpful, or did I confuse you too bad? Okay. So there's lots of flaws. Quite honestly, probably another big flaw is it's an absolute total waste, and I don't mind going on camera on this one, total waste of taxpayer dollars for all the county clerks that have to publish these, pay the postage, and handle them. It's just an utter waste of money. And I get trying to be more transparent with the numbers. We have a budget hearing. We're going to have one on 9/11. Come to the hearing. We will discuss every part of our budget with you if people have questions. We don't need another hearing to do that. So it's an utter waste of resources. I don't think anybody likes it. I would hope that someday they would calculate how much money it is costing taxpayers and labor to make this happen. And it's all for the sake of transparency, and there already was transparency to begin with, in my opinion. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry. All right. And probably the main question you might have tonight is, Doug, you're really not dropping the mill levy much. You told us the assessed valuation is going up a huge number. Why can't we do more? And believe you me, I would love to do more. First of all, our cash balances are thin. We've operated thin. You can go back and look at my budget documents for the last 10 years. We've operated thin for a long time. I've been doing my best to try to build them up a little bit, because as our budget grows every year, because we're getting more kids, we get more money, our budget's growing, our cash balances should grow proportionally with the size of your budget. They are not. And really the only, if the board was serious about, hey, we want to get to a comfortable level of cash balances, we could have done that this year. My recommendation would have been raise 6-7 mills to do that. We could have fixed it in a heartbeat, but I would not feel comfortable given everything else suggesting a mill levy increase. So we're going to continue to operate thin another year. But if at any point in time you all say we can't continue to live like this, we need to build up cash balances, it is possible, and I can show you how to do it. some of the bullet points underneath that, as far as our thin cash balances, why are they thin? Block grant killed us. I know it was 7, 8 years ago, but when those things happen, you don't recover. You just don't. And we got penalized literally millions of dollars. If we would have just took half the impact that we had, we would be fine today. We'd be at just that one alone. We would be fine today if we didn't get killed during block grant funding. But it goes back to when I tell you, we cannot live off the same dollars we did last year as a rapidly growing district. We had to hire more staff. We opened a new building. We've got utilities associated with that new building. It's just not possible. And then I got to give Phil credit. He's back there. Net 365. I love that phrase. We're going to make t-shirts, I think, someday on it. Net 365. Those of you that do see invoices, you know what net 30 is. Yeah. You know, you get an invoice for net 30, you need to pay your bill within 30 days. Well, what the state's doing to us is net 365. We have kids here this year that we need to educate. We had to hire teachers to do so, but they're going to make us wait 365 days, and in some cases even longer, before the funding actually shows up for that growth. It's shameful. It didn't used to be that way. Since I've been at it, 13 of my years, we had current year funding. We came, and I told you last time, we came so close. I mean, as close as you could come. The governor vetoed it at the very last minute. I thought we were in the clear. Shame on me. But I will say we do have momentum this year. I do want to give props to Representative Adam Thomas. He was phenomenal. He heard us. He met with us. He proposed the legislation. He got backing for it. He put a lot of time and effort into it, and we are very appreciative of that. I feel very confident there's a good chance we can get it next year, and that will be exciting for next year's budget. I've said this many times, new buildings are terribly inefficient and expensive. The last thing you want to do is open up Forest Spring Middle School and fill it completely full of 528 kids and have no room for growth. Because what are you going to do next year when there's another 50 kids move in? You're going to have to redistrict. You're going to have to do something else. You don't open it at capacity. Well, it's what, a little over half capacity right now. Plenty of room for growth, which is good. We don't have to do another bond issue anytime soon for another middle school, but new buildings are terribly inefficient. It's just the nature of the game. Another reason why, and I told you, we operate thin. We have lowered the mill levy 16 out of the last 17 years. There were plenty of years I could have came to you and said, let's get our cash balances up. It's going to require a mill levy increase. Are you behind me? And we could have, tried to get the voters to back it. But we haven't. We've been very conservative there. We've lowered it 16 in the last 17 years. We operate thin. And the next one on the list, and I'm going to use the word criminal because I really feel like there should have been lawsuits on this one. The amount of ESSER funding we got was shameful compared to what some of the other districts in the state. I've got a slide on that, so I won't go into too much depth there, but I'm utterly amazed. There should have been lawsuits all across the country because I know we weren't alone. The way it was distributed was flawed, and we were at the low end of the stick again. And if we could have just been in the middle of the road, we would be in a lot better shape today. So, more reasons, budgets are based on the long term. I said earlier, you're looking 4, 5, sometimes even 20 years out. How do we repay this debt? What does the mill levy need to be? So, I try to avoid that wave going up and down because everybody loves you when the mill levy drops 4 mils, but the year that it goes up 4 mils, that's going to probably lead to a call or two. Another reason why our balances are thin is the hugest portion of our budget is salaries and benefits. It makes up over 70% of our budget. And I know it's been important to the board, and I've heard it discussed in strategic meetings. We want to be able to attract high quality people and keep them. In today's climate, you got to pay them. It's just that they can go elsewhere. They can, and they do. Ms. Hackney will probably testify to that. Sometimes we don't pay them enough and they do leave. So we operate thin, we give as much as we can when we sit down and negotiate with the teachers. And so that's resulted in thin cash balances. And let's be honest, everybody likes smaller class sizes. Kids typically do better because they get more attention from their teacher. Our class sizes are pretty good. That costs money. If everybody wants to raise class sizes and we can stop hiring some staff and let them grow, it's probably going to make some parents angry, but that is a way to save money and to increase cash balances down the road. Not popular, but it is possible. Any other questions regarding cash balances? I do have one more slide on that here coming up. All right, I'm going to keep moving. Here is that slide. Here's where we fall. The recommendation for many years, there was really no recommendation on what's an appropriate cash balance. And then legislative post audit, per the request of the legislature, said, what is a reasonable percent? And they said, well, we think you need 2 months worth of operating expenditures. So here is the math of where we would fall based on cash balances as of 7/1/2022. I wish I could give you 7/1/23, but not everybody's numbers have come in yet. So it kind of lags a little bit. But a year ago, you can see where we were at 45%. At that time, there was one district a little below us, and you will see that there were a couple, Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley in particular, that was right at that target. And if you go all the way down, you will see at the top end of the schedule, you've got some districts that are sitting on twice as much as what would be recommended based on the 2 months worth of operating expenditures. So you see, we have some room to get where we need to. The gap there, 4.4 million. A mill with this year's budget, 1 mill would generate about $480,000. So you can do the math. It'd take about an 8 mill increase. We could do it 8 mills, boom, and we'd be right back in the running. We'd be near that 100%. Life would be good. You'd only have to do it once and be done. I don't recommend doing that in a year, but we'll operate thin this year, but we're going to do our best to try to put some money away. So if we eventually get successful and can build cash balances, I hope nobody beats us up because we're operating well below what's recommended. Excuse me. I talked earlier about block grant funding. I threw this in. This is an old slide. This was from a town hall meeting back in 2017 when I actually crunched the numbers. We had lost state aid of $3 million. So just going back to that other slide, pop in $3 million, then the shortfall is only 1.4. We're right there. We could make that up with just a couple mills. But block grant took away $3 million. How did we survive during that time? We levied some money in extraordinary growth, which we continue to do today. And that was actually a year where we pushed to get capital outlay from 4 mills up to 8 mills. And we need that for survival. So that was just a flashback. Here's a flashback too. I believe this is a year-old slide when I crunched some numbers that if we were just at the national average, and that's not even based on current enrollment, that's enrollment a few years back, $9 million. $9 million. Go back to 2 slides, we'd be sitting at 12.6. We'd be well over 100%. Well over 100%. So again, we're getting hit from multiple areas. Block grant funding cost us. ESSER, we're at the short end of the stick, cost us. So anyhow, the next slides I'll move kind of quickly and then cover a few things as I wrap up. You'll see here no, we don't want to shut down. Oh, what did I do? There we go. Did I lose there we go. Ooh, hold on. All right, we're back running. Sorry. So enrollment, this is just brick and mortar, not virtual. You can see that we had a moderate increase last year. We are expecting a bigger number this year. That's the 3874 is still kind of subject to change. So we don't have firm enrollment numbers just yet. That's the number I plugged into the budget software when I was putting it together. Where's the growth in Johnson County? I found this fascinating. This is over the last 5 years. Who has been the number one in growth every year? Last 5 years, us. And it ain't even close. Not even close. 18, 19, everybody was flat pretty much. We were at 7%. Next year, everybody's pretty much flat. We're at 5%. COVID year, everybody drops. We go up 2.2%. And that's brick and mortar. And then the year after that, 21, 22, up 8%. DeSoto saw some growth that year, but others were pretty much flat. And then last year, we grew a very modest 2.3%. It was below what we were hoping for, but still it's almost twice as much as the nearest district in the county. And we have heard whisperings of Dr. Luttrell, I know, shared some whisperings of what's going on in the county. Most are looking at flat enrollment, where we're looking at potentially 150 plus. So last year might have been an anomaly, and it may be back to where we were thinking it should be. Time will tell. We haven't reached to where I would call it a trend just yet. Assessed valuation history. Look at that. That is impressive. It's just ballooned the last few years. And I don't know that we can count on 20% every year. That I've never seen it go over 20% before, but this year we just barely went over 20%. But we are aware of some major projects coming up in our district that are going to help keep our assessed valuation humming. So the long term does look very promising. And I thought maybe somewhere down the road, I will give you a presentation on industrial revenue bonds. We've got 3 of them that hit us this year. Normally it's like 1 a year, maybe, and 3 of them come in. There's some cool numbers there, but I didn't want to take up the time tonight. State aid, important to note that as your assessed valuation per pupil decreases, state aid goes up, or just the reverse. As your assessed valuation per pupil grows, it shows a picture of being wealthier. And so if you're wealthier, that means you need less state aid. And thus you can see in the far right column, our state aid has been on the decline. Back when we did the 2018 bond issue, that was our last bond issue. We went to the voters in our campaign. We said our state aid is going to be 30%. It was in year 1, 30%. That was pretty exciting. It's now at 0.
Doug, is there any inflationary factors in that? Like, is it just a number and a ratio?
Yeah.
Because the value of the value's gone down. I guess the cost has gone up because of inflation. So they're just paying less to everybody.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a staggered, as everybody moves down, we kind of stay together. So it's based on the state averages. So it is possible that your assessed valuation per pupil could go up, but if everybody else is going up more, you might see an increase in state aid. It typically doesn't happen that way, but it is possible. But you can see here the last 4 years we have seen major, and this does include your virtual enrollment. You can see that in the middle column, but our state aid is decreasing. Our mill levy history, I thought it was cool to go clear back to 84, 85. I'm sure all of you were in kindergarten at that time, probably don't remember that, but 84, 85, we clear back then, we were below 100, but I remember Myrna telling me, my predecessor, that there was a year we were the highest mill levy ever, and you can see that tall mark, almost 150 mills. Nobody else was close. And then in 92, 93, you'll see that really low spot. That's when they redid the formula. I don't know what, I wasn't around at the time. I don't know what caused it to drop so significantly, but you'll see, I'm sure the voters were going, wait a second. It was 91 year. It's down to what, 40 something the next, and then almost back up to 90. That had to be an interesting couple of years for budget workshops or hearings. But I'm very proud of the fact that if you do look at the last 20 years, we did have just a couple years where we did have to increase it. My very first year was the 2003 bond issue that built the new high school. We went up 14.5 mils. It's beyond a miracle to think that we passed a bond election going up 14.5 mils. But we immediately started decreasing it. There was a little glitch that caused it to pop one year, but then we had a 13-year streak where we were lowering it every year. We finally, with the 2018 bond issue, we had to jump it up 4.5 mils, but we've been decreasing it the last 4. So very proud that you don't see this wave that used to exist 20, 30 years ago. So just breaking down the mill levy. And I realized I made an error and didn't get fixed in time. There is a new levy. You'll see that there's a huge decrease in the extraordinary growth. 22-23 was 11.128 mils, and it's now down to 6.779. I forgot to include the cost of living that we're levying this year. That's, I think I've got it in another slide, around 3 mils. But together, still, those two combined is still less than what we levied in extraordinary growth last year. So that is a new levy. You will see that we did quit. We didn't need to because we had a good cash balance and special liability expense fund. That mill levy actually dropped down to 0. We just didn't need to levy it this year. And even had a pretty significant decrease to special assessment. We had built up a nice cash balance there, so I tapered off that levy. That helped make up for the fact that we did need to levy more to make our bond payments. So that's where the 20.691 came from. Capital outlays flat and supplemental dropped a little bit. I forgot the other flaw with the revenue neutral rate is that it calculates the general fund's revenue neutral rate. If we go back clear to slide 1.
I saw that. I'm like,
Did you see that?
why are
Yeah.
you doing that? It's mandated at 20 anyway.
It's ridiculous.
Yes.
It says that the general fund should go down to 16.446. It can't. There's a state statute that forces it to be 20 mils. I don't control that one. That's the state. So another flaw. There's so many of them. I could write a book. So anyhow, I better get off my soapbox. So overall, though, the total is correct. The 67.198 mils for our district is correct. I shared this last time, but I didn't have the 23-24 numbers. I recently got the rest of the numbers. Everybody in Johnson County is either flat or declining, except Shawnee Mission. Shawnee Mission is going up about 1.4 mils. Well, they're by far and away the lowest and have been. Everybody's been chasing them for years, but they were a district that for whatever reason, I didn't do a real in-depth analysis, but they must have had a need to increase their mill levy this year. And then here is, again, some historical numbers. I won't dive in. You can read it on your own. Just shows over the last 10 years what people have been doing. All right. Getting back on my soapbox, fighting for fairness. I'm going to hit it one last time. Delayed enrollment, the fact that we have to wait a year to count to get funded for the kids that come in on that we get counted for on September 20th. You can see that if we just get 150 kids this year and it would have been current year funding, another $1 million, I could have done two things. I could have reduced the mill levy right now, 2 mils, give everybody a 2 mil relief, or I'm telling you, we're thin on cash balances. We could have just said, all right, we're not going to give that back. Let's get our cash balances closer to where they need to be. That would be a choice that the board would need to talk about and make. The debt, there's the pre-2015 debt, there's the post-2015 debt, huge discrepancy there. Huge. No state aid on our latest debt, state aid on our older debt. If it was all being funded at the same level, you're talking $3.8 million. That translates to 8 mills. Right there, if all of our debt was being given state aid at 49%, there's 8 mills. Our cash balances are right where they need to be. Wouldn't give any mill levy relief, but we could get cash balances right where they need to be. Lack of new facility waiting. This has been a thorn on my side. And I'm telling you, if we just had one big district in Johnson County that was dealing with this wouldn't be an issue because their lobbyists would be all over it. But for years, you could get new facility waiting for new kids because they used to recognize it is expensive to open up a new facility. It costs a lot of money to do that. Well, if we could have got funded for the 280 kids this year, and that's just a rough number at Forest Spring, right there would have been almost 480,000. That would have saved us potentially, could have trimmed another mill off, or again, put it towards cash balances. So there's 3 areas, add it all up. That's 2, 8, 10, 11 mills, 11 mills. So, all right, this is important. We need a break. You guys have done a great job. Staff's done a great job. Our patrons have done a great job. We've kept our 4-0. We have been 4-0 on the last bond elections. And not only that, we've kept every promise. When we went to voters and said the mill levy won't go up any more than this, we always made sure it didn't go up more than this. And then we quickly got it going downward. And it's amazing to think, squeezed in the middle, there are 2 bond elections where we told voters it will not increase the mill levy. Some of them said, how's that possible? We did it. We didn't raise the mill levy to do those. Now, when we got to 2018, we had to, there was no other way. But the good news is, even though it went up 4.25 that 1 year, it's now started to go down since. So pat yourselves on the back. This is good news. It should develop trust within our community that when we do a bond election, we account for worst case scenario. We use the phrase a lot. We overpromise and under
promise, over deliver.
There you go. Under promise, over deliver. So you always want to over deliver, and we over delivered. Yes. Thank you. Final thoughts. Fiscal responsible management. Responsible fiscal management has resulted in our 2016 bond projects came in completed below budget. We're getting real close to closing out 2018. There's a few things that's just going to take a while to filter off to where we can close all the numbers down once and for all. Hopefully around January, we'll be able to come back and give a final number, but everything looks well. And it's important to note, you're sitting on 150, 160 acres that you could build a future high school site on that's paid for. So you wouldn't necessarily need to put that in a future bond issue. It is a good idea to always be buying land ahead, but the good news is you got a big chunk of land waiting for that next high school when that's necessary. And then I've been to you many times over the years. Hey, we can refinance our bonds, save a little interest. And since 2007, there's been over $10 million in interest payments saved. And when you do the math and think 10 million, well, if we didn't save that, obviously you wouldn't have that all hit in 1 year. But if it did all hit this year, that's close to 15, 16 mills. So it's a pretty big number. It's a big deal how much we've saved in interest by refinancing debt. And then again, it's important to brag. The mill levy has gone down 16 of the last 17 years. And with that, I'll check the time. How are we doing? Ooh, I ran over. I apologize. I get excited talking about numbers. So, but you guys did ask some great questions along the way. I was going to take you on a little website tour. I don't know whether it's functioning right now. Just to show you where everything's parked. Just one final comment. And this is important to note, because I won't be here forever. The budget book. The new budget book is not ready yet. It takes a lot of time to put this thing together. It's important to note we're one of maybe the only district that the finance guy takes the time and effort to put and I'm not trying to brag on myself. Myrna did this before me. I just kept the tradition going. I love this book because even though it takes me 30 to 40 hours to put together, it'll save me 30 or 40 hours during the year answering questions. I can quickly go here when you go, well, what was assessed valuation 5 years ago? Oh, give me just a second. And then I can tell you where to go and find it on the website because all of these are stored on the website. So it takes a lot of work to put together, but it is a wonderful historical reference because I can't remember everything. I'm getting old and I forget. So this will be available at the hearing and I'll pass you out a copy to hang on to, but it is important to note the full budget. It's already posted to our district website. I'll check and see whether it's still down. Oh, hit refresh. Okay. Little refresh button. Oh, we're back up again. The full budget is available. It's just in the crude, I'll call it the crude format. It's about 145 pages. It just doesn't have any captions, any history. It just shows the funds and the formulas. And if you're able to take it and decipher it, it's on our website. I encourage our patrons, if they want to get a jump start before the hearing and start going through our entire budgets on our website. If people want to come and get a copy, I'm going to hand them the hard copy of just the plain version. If they wait until the hearing, I can give them the full, nice, pretty version with all the details. So that's important to note because when the hearing gets published, it says that if they want a copy of our budget, they can come pick it up. They can, it's just not going to be the fancy version until the date of the hearing. It should be available before then, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway. So anyhow, if you go to our homepage and you go to our district, you'll see that just about midway down, right below Board of Education, is the budget. And from the budget, you will see that there are certain things that state statutes requires to be prominent on our webpage. We have to have the Form 150 out in the open. We need to have the budget profile out in the open, the budget at a glance. Those are all new. They're updated. They're ready to look at. If you go to the USD230 budget, I have updated the description and I basically tell you there's two ways to view the budget. You can go to the first option. That's the KSDE version. That's what everybody's turning into the state. If you want to go look at Paola's or Olathe or whoever's and just get that plain format, they're not all published for this year, but they will eventually all be on KSDE's website. The fancy version I'm working on. I have updated pieces to our website. As I finish pieces, they'll continue to get uploaded to where the whole budget will be ready here soon. So I will stop there since I've exceeded my time. Do you have any other questions? I want to make sure later in the meeting, you do have to approve 2 notices. That's the only action you need to take tonight that's budget related. And they will go in the paper on Wednesday in the Miami County Republic. And then we have to wait 10 days, which we'll have 10 days before we have the hearings. So when we meet again, it'll be September 11th at 6:15. We'll start with the revenue neutral rate hearing. I'll have just a short couple of slides just to share. And then hopefully there'll be people from the public come and ask their questions. That's their chance to speak. And then as soon as that's over, we'll go right into the big budget hearing. And again, I'll have a very short little couple slides and then give the public a chance to voice their opinion. And then you all will vote, take final action on the revenue. You'll have to pass the revenue neutral rate resolution if you choose to exceed it, which the only way you can't would be to drop the mills 8 mills. So if you would have a change of heart and say we're dropping at 8 mills, I don't know that I can remain as your finance director, but you have that power. I want you to know you have the ability and the power to do that. It's not recommended, but there it is. And so then you'll adopt the budget, and then that'll be the last you hear from me from a while, unless you have questions along the way. So anything else before I wrap up?
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate
All right.
the clarity and detail that you provide and putting things into so that even I could understand it. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I enjoy doing it. And this is kind of my fun time of the year. But if you have questions come up, you know how to reach me, email me, call me, text me. I don't care. Reach out. I do want to make sure people understand it the best they can. So thank you.
Well done. You always explain the things without me having to ask. So I have a collection of those books. You know, they're going to be worth something someday. I think I'm gonna have all of a even dozen. So,
Well, I'll autograph them if you want.
okay.
That'd be nice. All right, well, we are calling our regular stated meeting to order. First item on that is approval of the agenda, or let's collect roll. Rachel?
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing, Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Here.
Mrs. Milius. Here. We have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda.
The ceiling was here. Yeah. Came off of me.
Approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
It's moved and seconded for approval of the agenda. Any corrections or edits, comments? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius. Yes. Approved.
Very good. Thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you. Our next item is to review the mission and vision of our district. I think it's always good to start out our meetings with a clarification or a reminder of what our vision and mission are. So our vision is to maintain small town values and empower each student to achieve world-class success. Our mission is to be a school district that engages students to learn, create, adapt, and succeed in an ever-changing world. So let's keep those in mind as we move through our agenda. Moving on to business with individuals. Rachel?
No cards were presented.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to good news recognitions and announcements. Dr. Luttrell?
Yes, a couple things. First off, on the notice we did put in there this year, I said we were going to try to get more communication to you from the actual buildings. And so this month we started where each building submitted, some highlights from their building in written format that was put there as an attachment for you to view. You'll continue to see that evolve throughout the school year, probably in terms of eventually hoping to try to get that where every one of those highlights could possibly, or the majority of them, be embedded into a hyperlink where you could click and go get further information if there was further information that would existed. But like I said, Dr. Villarreal and his staff and Rachel, spent a great deal of time kind of putting the template together for our principals to use, because we do think it's important that you all have as much information at your fingertips that we can make available to you, so you can know all of the many great things that are happening across the district. Then we also have, as we did last year, at least, hopefully throughout the year, we'll have months where we want to present and recognize individuals that have been nominated by their principal or another administrator to receive a core value award. Remember our core 5 core values, which as a board you all developed a few years ago, and then since that time we've tried to convey those to our staff, and we even recently had our newest revised strategic plan that's basically outlines where we want to be at and what we want to look like in the year 2028 around each of those 5 core values. And so here this evening, we have one of our building principals with us here this evening from Timber Sage. And some of you may not may recall that there's a new principal, but Miss Jody is here this evening, and she's going to recognize 2 individuals for their contributions to the core values, and she will explain and highlight what kind of warranted her submitting this information. So we'll let Jody, if you want to say a few words and make sure the mic's on, and we'll be good.
Is it on? Amazing. All right. So as you heard, my name is Jody Moschler. I'm the principal at Timber Sage Elementary, and I have the honor and privilege of recognizing 2 outstanding Timber Sage Elementary staff members for exemplifying some of those core values here in Spring Hill. One of our members is not here yet, so I'm going to do one behind me, and then hopefully our next person does show up. So the first person I want to recognize is Jamie Wise. So Jamie Wise is an instructional coach at Timber Sage Elementary and exemplifies the core value of supportive environment. Jamie has gone above and beyond to help create a positive culture where each staff member feels valued, encouraged, and empowered to thrive in our schools. In the realm of supportive environment, Jamie acts as a mentor, advocate, and ally, ensuring that every student and staff member's journey is met with unwavering encouragement and positivity. So I wanted to make sure that we go ahead and celebrate her tonight for supportive environment. Today. Right?
One, two, three.
So even though our next person is notoriously late, so she'll probably show up after we're already done, I did want to read it for her because she is amazing also. So the second person I wanted to recognize is Michaela Grimes. So Michaela exemplifies world-class staff as a best paraprofessional in our best program. Michaela is kind, patient, calm, and builds great relationships with our students. She is a role model for how to hold high expectations for all students and holds a core belief that all students can achieve. So I just wanted to take time to really shout her out, because if you ever watch her with some of our students in the best program, it is literally amazing to see her in action. So I wish she was here. I could totally make our best teacher stand up and take it in her place, but Elise would probably not be very happy with me. Thank you for allowing us to come and share the amazing things happening in our building.
Very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate you doing that.
And then we also, if you recall last year, we also started every month, we had a highlight video from one of our schools and kind of just say, hey, what's been happening? Well, we just started school, so we didn't really want to go in and force a video on any particular school. So again, our outstanding communications department, Dr. Villarreal, realizes there's a lot that goes into preparing for a new school year. And so we have a brief video that, again, Dr. Viriel and the staff put together that kind of talks, kind of just shows some of the images that occurred in terms of our new teacher onboarding and mentoring, our opening ceremony. And again, I think you'll enjoy it.
There's a lot of energy in the room immediately when you went in, from the very beginning, all the way from the new teachers and staff members coming in, the building administration, all the way up through assistant superintendent and superintendent.
I think it's been great so far. I think each building having an instructional coach has been huge, someone that I can go to right away with all of my questions.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Spring Hill, I've heard great things, and I'm excited to get started. And I do love it here.
I feel like I'm like home. I'm so thankful every day that I chose Spring Hill and that Spring Hill allowed me to be here and gave me this opportunity. It's been a world difference. And I'm just so excited to get started.
Right, we are preparing for our school year, kind of going day by day, really looking at last year's plans a little bit, merging our own. We're getting some new curriculum this year with CKLA, so we're excited about that.
I love my staff people. I love the people that I work with. There is just a very fun culture here.
I've been looking at all the state standards and going through state standards and matching them with all my lessons to make sure everything goes together. And then also been doing a lot of training on the mandated training, making sure that I'm on top of everything with my training.
I do love it here at Spring Hill. I love the closeness of this community. Parents are really involved in things and the students really love coming to school. And so I feel the same way.
That was great. Love the energy, love the positivity. It's a good time, ready for the school year to kick off.
It was electric. I love it here.
It's the first day of school. What a gorgeous morning to welcome kids back to our schools. We've got lots of new friendly faces, plenty of familiar friendly faces. We're thrilled to have everyone back.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I told my first hour that they're the first ever 8th grade class here. And a lot of the kids didn't go to school together last year, so there's some new faces. So I want them to meet some new friends, hopefully for 8th grade, since next year they're all the way back together.
It's so nice to walk in and see the kids walking around and just their faces in awe of this brand new, amazing building. How could you not love it here in Spring Hill?
And that's the good news, recognitions and announcements. Again, Dr. Viriel and his department did a great job on the video. But again, all of our departments, are from technology to our facilities and construction you're going to hear from next. Our principals, everyone gave a yeoman's effort during the summer to make sure that we had a smooth start to our school year. And that carried over even to the first week and a half. As you know, that heat wave we had last week was unprecedented. And again, it took all of our stakeholders to really try to make sure that we were able to manage through that successfully, and everyone went above and beyond. But even our students and parents all did a great job making sure that we got through it. And again, as you heard, our theme this year for the school district is "I love it here," and it was really refreshing to see, even in the video unscripted. You have so many of our staff and everyone talking about how much they love it here. So again, that's our good news, recognitions and announcements.
Thank you, Dr. Luttrell. I appreciate that. Great video. Great to see that and see the excitement in the new school year. Moving on to our next agenda item is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of the consent agenda, approval of the minutes of the August 14th regularly stated meeting, the clerk's report, treasurer's report, payroll and claims, personnel, placement of Board of Education meeting date set for January 2024. Cornerstones of Care Agreement and the Kaufman Real World Learning Data Sharing Agreement. Any questions, comments, or edits to the consent agenda?
Mr. President, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
The second the motion.
It's moved and seconded for approval of the consent agenda. Any final comments or edits? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Milius?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing? Mrs. Sealing? Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to discussion items. First item of discussion is summer maintenance and construction projects, an update.
Yes, we had a full summer, making sure that, again, finishing up final touches with Forest Spring Middle School to make sure that it was ready to open. And then we had quite a few other projects across the district. You know, you heard many of them last spring with, everything from our kitchen renovation at the middle school and some other work across the district in parking lots and middle school as well. And, with some of their things. And so here to give us an update on those projects, we're going to kick it off with Mr. Meek, and then we'll transition into Mr. Kylie Delphia. So gentlemen, take it away.
All right, excuse me. Not a lot really new on the construction part of it. Most of you, other than we opened a building and it was successful and all of that, but most of you were there at the open house and know we opened it, or you'd been getting a lot of emails or something about not opening. So at this point, there's no real changes to the budget. As Doug said, we're working through that. Sometime after the first of the year, we hope to have a new budget. We've got some things we've still got some stuff to purchase and all. I will say that we're basically right now for Forest Spring. Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We're pretty close to our budget, so we're going to start looking at contingency here before long. The FF&E part of that definitely hit us harder than what we would have expected. Plus, we also spent a little bit of money out of there to outfit like 10 classrooms at Spring Hill Middle School. Plus, we also did some new weight equipment and stuff at Spring Hill Middle School as well out of that budget. So, so we will be updating that at one of the next times that we give a report. Again, we've got, like I said, some stuff like track equipment that'll be coming out. We're still looking at a storage building there on that site as well. We put that in, but we knew with COVID and everything, when that bid out, we were pretty cautious on our budget and we didn't want to include that in there and not get a building because we included a storage building area on that site as well. So now that we're looking at it and we think we have the money to do it, we're working with the city of Spring Hill to make sure exactly what they will allow us to put there as far as storage goes. And as that progresses, I'll come back with you a little more on that. So, really, most of the pictures that you'll see here on this are going to be from the open house. So a lot of them, if you went through the open house, you got to see people out. It was kind of neat to see people out looking at the whole building and some of the comments that I got from some people as they would come by and all. And there's one man that is pretty outspoken a lot of times in our district about things we do. And he came by and he says, "You guys built a great building. You didn't," he said, "I've been through a lot of other districts and stuff, buildings." He said, "You guys built what we needed. You guys didn't build the luxury resort that some other places do. But he said, I think we got what we wanted, and he's got a grandchild in the building, and he was extremely happy about the building as he went through it. I will say that last week, as Dr. Luttrell said, with the heat, Forest Spring, we got to work through a few issues, which I was quite glad that it happened. It's always good at the very beginning to have that kind of a heat wave. It's not good on the rest of Kylie's buildings, but in that building, I was kind of happy to have it because it really tested the building, and we found some parameters that weren't just exactly where they should be, and we were able to get contractors in and start making some changes. And even today, we had a follow-up meeting at 7:00 this morning to follow through with the contractor, the controls person, J.E. Dunn, myself, Kylie. I'm trying to think, the actual manufacturer's rep was there as well for the rooftop units. So we had quite a variety of people there this morning just to follow up and kind of go over what we learned and if there's anything else. And two of the contractors, the manufacturer's rep was sending somebody out tomorrow. The controls guy was there today going through a few things just to check out. So it gave us a real good test for the building, and also helped us to learn a little bit about our building. And I think it'll be a very positive thing from there. So any questions about the facility, about the summer, not the summer, we're getting ready for the summer maintenance projects, about the new construction. All right. I'll let Kylie talk a little bit more about the summer maintenance.
Good evening. So it was really tight. It came down to the last day of getting some things completed. I'm pleased to say that we got everything done with exception to one item, which I'll touch base on here. I'll just quickly go through some of these here. Got the flooring done at Prairie Creek Elementary School in the foyer restrooms. They look fantastic, very nice. The sidewalks out front coming out of the pod to the main sidewalk, we got those finished, as you can see there. All the lighting upgrades for those rooms are finished. Carpet replacements are done, and all the water fountain replacements are complete. The kitchen production and storage addition is all complete. Looks very nice. The kitchen ladies are extremely happy to have that extra storage and some upgraded equipment. Got anything to say? Okay. Carpet replacement, upper level entryway of the high school. We got that complete. Lighting upgrades. We're continuing to do that throughout the year. It wasn't really necessarily something that was a summer project, but it's something we're continually doing throughout the year. All the parking lot drive lights got replaced. Water fountain replacements were done there at the high school. This is the one thing that is not finished. We did do one field. I want to say we replicated something that other school districts had, this design here, and some of the coaches don't really like it. So we kind of went back to the drawing board on it. We've met with DLR probably 4 or 5 times now. And actually I got a meeting this week with Clay to see what he would like to see done there. So it's gonna come back as a discussion item again, because the expense is it's gonna be pretty high, what we're gonna have to do, no matter what decision we make. DLR gave us about 5 choices of things we could do, so it's gonna be pretty expensive. So that will be, again, that'll come back as a discussion item. So
what's the solution they got there right now? It looks kind of different. I couldn't really see it from the road.
Yeah, it just
like an angle across.
It comes up at an angle
over the top of home plate or something.
Yep, that's correct. And that's what the coaches don't like about it. But we did replicate what other districts have. Gardner has something similar. I can't remember the other districts, but
seems like you see it out of the corner of your eye or something. And
yeah. So
that's with you.
It was one of the least expensive options. And like I said, we're trying to replicate what some of the other districts did, but like they're just not pleased with it. So we're going back to the drawing board to see if we can come up with a better solution. So new shot put area is finished there. You can see the aerial shot there, what was previously done and the new, and it looks fantastic. Very nice. So that's just the map of all the flooring replacements we did. And here's a few pictures. You can see the office there. One thing we did do that I did not have on the discussion item in March was we pulled the wallpaper off in the office and repainted the walls. It wasn't in my plans to do it, but as we were pulling all the furniture out and everything, it was the perfect time to do it. So we just went ahead and had that done, and it looks fantastic. So all the floors were epoxied, lockers, restrooms, they look great. There's a couple more there's one of the restroom again. Hallways, you can see they've been painted. And another thing that I didn't have on there and I wasn't expecting to do, but we found the time to do it, was replace all the lights there in the hallway with LEDs, and it just really brightened things up. And if you ever get a chance to go out there and look at it, the picture really doesn't do it justice. So it looks great. And then Mark Meek has plans to put something up there on the walls, pictures or, something to add a little something to it. So some more pictures of it. And then there is the kitchen, and it's all finished, and it is great. Kitchen ladies are happy. JC's happy. It's just great how the flow of children come in and get their lunch. Everything works a lot better. So it's really good. Some more pictures there. That's coach's office flooring. Another thing I did not add, and that I had added to the board meeting in March, this is something else we did. We powder coated the locker rooms. This is the boys' locker rooms. We didn't do the girls' locker rooms because they were in really good shape. Actually, boys were in bad shape, rust and some other things. So we had all those powder coated, and that's what they look like. And they look phenomenal too. Look really good. Here's some more pictures of flooring. This is room 300. We actually got this flooring for free. And I'm not sure, somebody went to some sort of conference and put their name in the hat and got free flooring for a room. So we picked the biggest room we could find at Spring Hill Middle School and said, yeah, this is the room we want. And all we had to do is pay for the labor. So, and you can see it's kind of a stone look. It's something Mark picked out. He thought it looked nice, and it does really look good. So, and then this next picture here, you can see the polished concrete floors in the STEM lab. And then there's the fax room and another science room, polished concrete floors, and then the LVT there. There's a room with carpet and new furniture too, point that out. And then this, Brandon is actually getting the plants for this here in the next couple of weeks. So it's best time to plant is in the fall or spring. So he's going to get those and fill those beds up with probably some of those tall prairie grass and some other flowers and types. So then there is the stadium, and that looks beautiful too. If you haven't gone out there to see it, it really looks nice. So new track last year, painted the stadium. It's really looks brand new. So it's great. Just a few other things we got complete. Third grade pod carpet replacement. We've got that done. We retiled the snack floor in the early childhood center, Timber Sage Elementary School, the west sidewalk drainage. We got that finished. And, the district-wide parking lots, crack seal, potholes, and striping's all been complete. That is it. Any questions?
A lot of projects, Grant, a lot of coordination going on there. Good job.
There was.
Yeah, how'd you get all that done so fast?
I don't know. It was very stressful. Next year, I'm probably not going to do as much. So,
but it looks
good.
great. Well done.
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the work you put into the older buildings. I think that's one of our biggest things that we try to do is keep some equity there with the people that are attending those buildings that have been there a while. And I think the stadium at the middle school looks fantastic. I drove by the other day. Everything just looks really great. So thank you for all your hard work.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. Looks great. All right. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you, Kylie. Thank you, Tim. Moving on to our next discussion item, which is crisis management plan for 22-23 school.
all school districts, need to have and are required to have a crisis management plan that addresses a lot of matters that could arise during the school year, in terms of procedures and so forth. And so this tonight, we do this every year, but it's updated in terms sometimes of new strategies. We might have a new program that we may have gotten certified for the prior year that, or maybe implementing a new program that's tied into security, which both of those occurred this time. So we update those into the plan. And so again, here to take a few moments to kind of walk you through our current year 23-24 overall safety plan. We have Dr. Robinson as well as Dr. Villarreal going to take a few moments and walk us through that.
Well, Kylie and Tim gave us a nice lead in, because when you take care of your buildings and you stay up to date across the board with your facilities, it takes a piece of the crisis management and makes it a whole lot easier. So what you're going to see tonight is just a pretty surface level view of the plan. All of our building principals receive training in this plan each fall, and then they provide training to their staff to make sure we're all on the same page. Probably the biggest change from last year to this year is the addition of the Centegix components to our plan. The rest of the plan stayed pretty similar to last year, and so we'll hit on kind of the high points. So in board docs, you also have a redacted copy of the template that our buildings receive. They are asked to fill in their crisis team. So all of our buildings have two primary teams within their building. They have one that works on the crisis side, and then, as Dr. Villarreal will mention a little bit later, they have a Project Adam team as well. Typically, there's some overlap. We've tried to move the last 2 years that the positions on their crisis team, some of those are tied to positions in their building, like the school counselor has a specific role within the plan. Part of that is to make sure that if we do have an issue at one of our buildings, and as a district team we're coming to support, we should know that across the board, that's the responsibility of the school counselor within the crisis plan. But they take this template back, they fill it in based on the skills within their building and provide it back to us so that we have a copy of it. The other piece we wanted to highlight, there is, in addition to the response pieces, there are 2 safety checklists that we ask our building principals at some point in the fall semester to go in and fill out. Both of these should be helpful to our district as we move forward and really identifying any problem areas or areas that, as you spoke earlier with Tim and Kylie, as areas that we may want to address in the future with construction or updating. So just know those are there, and we'll share that information with the board in the future. It was mentioned at a previous board meeting about another district that has access to lots of plans for nearly any situation. Ours has that as well. That was a change we made last year. If you remember, we connected our plan to a national plan. So we have actually have plans for all of these areas. Things that don't occur in our area, we could still access if we needed to, like typhoons and things like that. But it means that we're tying into the most up-to-date crisis plans that are available nationwide for schools and agencies to use. The other piece that's in our plan is our most updated tornado and fire maps, as well as maps to where all of our AEDs are. This is helpful to us. It's helpful to law enforcement and other agencies that may come in a crisis situation. We're, I think, just finished updating for spring. So we should have all of our crisis plans up to date with safety maps as well. You want to talk protocols?
Yeah. And I'll talk to you briefly about the protocols that appear in our crisis and safety management plans. And as mentioned earlier, most of these were in place already last year with the addition of Centegix. So hopefully this is a nice refresher for you. The first is our building visitor protocols. So making sure that we have safe and secure access to our buildings. All of our buildings have a call button or a phone in the vestibule that requires folks to press the doorbell or dial the extension in order to gain access to the building. So just knowing and understanding and providing training to all of our front office staff on the different types of visitors that we might have to our buildings and what the protocols are for allowing entry to those folks, and then what's required of them once they're inside the building. Making sure that we're consistent with that across the board, especially as we've had some new folks join our front office teams in the building. So putting an emphasis on this, and as Dr. Robinson mentioned earlier, providing this training to all of our principals this fall, who then in turn provided it to their staff members during pre-service, and they did provide it to the whole staff. So even if you're a teacher, you know and understand what to do should a visitor come up to your building. As a high level overview for you, and this is all detailed out in the plan, but anyone entering a building, we ask them to buzz in from that system in the vestibule, and our front office staff will ask them to identify who they are and why they're there. And then with that information, they'll buzz them into the building. And then take care of them if they are a volunteer, an observer, a district employee, or a special services staff member. So details for that are in that template that's linked in board docs, so you can check that out in more detail. Crisis Alert is our new system powered by Centegix that we added this year. So we now all have our Crisis Alert badges. We've done the training. Phil, Tim, and Kylie did a really great job of getting out to every building and doing the training with them. So that way everyone was getting the same message and the same information. So we have this new ability to trigger two different types of alerts. One is called a staff alert, where if an individual needs assistance for an emergency reason, like an issue in an area, a medical issue, or a fight happening, they can click their button and engage that piece. There's also the campus-wide alert that we'll use in the event that we need to trigger Alice in one of our buildings. So we can now do that through our crisis alert badges that every staff member has them, substitute teachers have them. Yes, Nels.
Where do those calls, who takes and fields those calls?
Yeah, that's a great question. When the employee initiates one of these two alerts, each building has an assigned team that responds to them. That would include their building principal, their nurse, their front office staff, and then anyone else that the principal is designated. If it also gives a couple people here at the district office the notifications as well. If it is an Alice alert, the campus-wide alert, that goes to our SROs, as well as those staff in the building and a team of members here at the district office. The next protocol that we have, this again is something that we adopted previously. It's our standard response protocol that we use for different reasons. We might have to change what we're doing in a building. So if we're engaging in a hold, securing the building, Alice, an evacuation, or a shelter in place. One of the things that we did provide this year is we provided stickers with some brief information for each of these that they have on the back of their Centegix badge. So if they should hear their principal say, we're going into a hold, and they're like, shoot, what does a hold mean again? They can just look at the back of their badge and it has that information there for them. We also printed out large posters with that same information on it, and we've put those in every room throughout the district. So they can also look at that as a reference point. Our Centegix system, and again, Tim and Phil did a really great job with this, aligns perfectly with this, where we have the strobes in all of the rooms. The strobe colors are these same colors. They were able to match it up so that if we do go into a hold or we activate a hold, then the strobe will light up purple, and it will, over the audio system, give all of the indicators of what staff members are supposed to do at that time. Same with any of these other ones. So it's really nice that we were able to seamlessly integrate those two systems together. Alice is our active shooter response protocol. It's option-based. It's not a sequential series of events. We also produced Alice posters this year telling everyone what each of the letters stand for and provided training to them so they know and understand how to react should Alice get initiated in one of their buildings. And the details for that are in that template that's linked on board docs as well. And finally is Project Adam. As you all know, we were recognized as Heart Safe Schools. All of our schools throughout the district were. Obviously, we've opened for a spring this year, so they'll have to engage in the entire certification process. All of our other buildings just have to recertify this year, but that does include making sure that we have AEDs in every building and a really clear cardiac emergency response plan that includes training for staff members on what to do in those situations. So this is something that does have to be approved by the board annually. It'll come back at a future meeting. And now we'll take any questions or feedback that you have for us before it comes back as an action item.
Are the colors that you have lined out, is that kind of a standard, or is that just something specific to our district?
Yep, it's called Standard Response Protocol, and it's from a national foundation called the I Love You Guys Foundation, and it's used commonly across the country in school districts.
Maybe you said that and I missed.
No, I didn't say it.
And so on the Centegix crisis alert system, every teacher, every staff member understands exactly what happens when they push that button, right? They know who's coming, what kind of support they can have. That's the thing, and at least in my mind, is critical. That's just excessively clear, is that everyone understands what the response is, their responsibilities of the person pushing the button, and then those that respond. And so that's all crystal clear.
Yes, we again provided training. Tim, Kylie, and Phil went out to every building and provided that training to all staff members. And then we also did training here in this building and in the building next door for all of our staff members that work in these two buildings to make sure that they know and understand what happens when they click that building and whose responsibility it is, or that button, excuse me. In the crisis plan template, there's also a page that explains what happens in each of the different types of alerts and who responds to those types of alerts within the building. So if people are thinking to themselves, gosh, I can't remember who that is, they can always reference that. I'm also working with Michelle and HR right now to put together a short 5-minute refresher video that we can use, that people can watch quarterly, or a principal could show it at one of their building staff meetings, just as a reminder. Hey, remember, we have these badges. This is how they're used. This is what you do with them. And this is what response will happen. So we're making sure that all of our staff members are comfortable with the system and understanding how to use it.
Can I add?
How about temporary folks?
And we spoke a
Go
little
ahead,
bit
Josh.
the other day. I think there's a calibration piece with anything new like this where I think there's still a little bit of concern from staff about what if I set it off accidentally? Where does it go? What happens? We'll use a little bit of time at each of our district leadership team meetings with our building principals just to kind of review any situations that they have had in their building and use it effectively, or what challenges they've come up with. I would tell you, Tim and Phil have been great so far as we have run drills and found, wording things that either didn't make sense to the team or whatever. They were quick to make those changes. So I think we'll get more comfortable the more it's around and the more it's used. But I think there is a little bit of work just to make sure we're all on the same page as to when we want to utilize it.
Yeah. And so temporary, like subs, folks like that, how do they get up to speed very quickly?
Michelle and her department do substitute orientation for all of our subs as they're hired on as subs for our district. And they've incorporated that into sub orientation. So they get the training there. And then we've also asked our front office staff that when they issue them a substitute Centegix badge, when they're subbing that day, to give them a refresher, quickly remind them this is how the system is used. And then once we have that video prepared, that'll be accessible for substitutes as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for?
Coming off the heels of another senseless school shooting too, actually, since Friday. how far, is this only in the building that these work? Do these work on the football field, in our parking lot? How far does that system work?
Yeah, and again, I give credit to Tim and Phil and Kylie because they're the ones who helped the folks at Centegix get the system set up. But they have it set up to where it is covering all of our district property. So if you are outside at the stadium, it still works. It works anywhere as long as you are on campus, and it doesn't matter. So I'm assigned to this building. If I'm at Spring Hill High School and I click my badge, it will work there as well. So for staff members that are moving to different places, their badge works in those different places.
Thanks. And one more question, does each area know, like when the alert where it's who is supposed to be taking that next step to call emergency services?
So one of the things, if we go into that campus-wide alert, which is the Alice piece, one of the things that we've emphasized during training is that our badges are not currently set up to connect with 911 dispatch. It does go to our SROs, but you still need to call 911. And the question that has come up in every training is, well, whose responsibility is it to call 911? And the answer is yours. Everyone's. We would rather have 100 people in a building call 911 than have no one call 911. And that's part of the training that they receive when we do Alice as well, because that's one of the pieces of Alice. The inform piece is connecting with local law enforcement and sharing with them the information that you have available.
Was that the initial setup of it, or is that just how ours is set up?
I'm gonna look at Phil because if I answer this wrong, he'll come fix it for me. But it is an option to connect with 911 dispatch. And at this time, we haven't engaged that option.
So one of the recommendations and talking with some of the other districts, they all went through this, as Dr. Robinson mentioned, kind of that evaluation period. And the neighboring districts who have Centegix, they started without it being connected as well, mostly to give everybody that little bit of sense of let's get tested, let's use it, let's make sure everybody understands how it works. That is an option. At the time we were doing the original purchase, the Johnson County Dispatch did not have an ability to do that. They have since, because the other districts are coming on this fall. So we'll let them work the bugs out of it, and then we'll be right behind.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you. Appreciate you providing this to us. Moving on to our next discussion item, which is the facility usage guide.
And this facility usage has been on discussion, for a past few meetings. And we thought we'd bring it back one additional time and see if there was any other direction. There really hasn't been too many updates since the last couple meetings ago, but we'd like to get some direction as to how you'd like us to move forward. And if you think you're close to being ready for us to bring this back as an action item, soon. I will say that we have had the discussion in terms of when you look at the facility usage policy in and of itself is somewhat of a separate component to some degree than the Spring Hill Rec Association. And one thing we are looking at and have in motion right now is to continue to have open dialogue with the Spring Hill Rec, along with Mr. Delphia, Dr. Robinson, myself, along with Greg Goheen, to see, as you noticed, that what few meetings ago was said, that Spring Hill Rec would like to have more of some things in writing as to, what facilities, to what extent they could use those in terms of, as well as, maintenance on, and as well as still allowing the district to have some leeway and in writing about when and necessary, we can take an area back, to our domain for whatever reason. And we're going to continue working on that. I think we want to get school started, but sometime in October, we're going to start that. But the facility usage piece for just the general public, we do want to try to, get that, tidied up if we can. But remembering that once it is tied up and you do put it in it can always be brought back. Usually it's like a student handbook. It's brought back and any updates or changes for the next year can be put forward at that time. But Dr. Robinson, you and Kylie want to make any comments before we open it back up to questions?
Yeah, as we were preparing for this meeting, making some minor changes to definitions, and there was a suggestion about adding clear contact information and to help patrons. One of the questions that I think President Updike asked at the last meeting was, does our facility usage plan align with our board policy? And I would tell you, quick glance, 90% of it easy to answer that. The one part that we were discussing, I thought was worth at least bringing back to the board for a discussion to see what your interpretation is. So I pulled up policy KG, and the very first paragraph, I try not to read to people, but I'll do that quickly just so that you've got a picture of it, and so do our people in the audience. The board shall encourage the use of school buildings and school grounds by community groups. Use of any school facility or school grounds, however, shall not interfere with the daily school student routine or any school-sponsored activity. USD 230 reserves the right to require non-school groups to provide and pay for appropriate supervision security at the school district's discretion. I think, depending on how you interpret it, we could go a lot of different directions, but I think we'd like to kind of get your interpretation as a board as to, you've had a lot of discussion the last couple of weeks around our policy, and just what your interpretation is of that piece of the policy and whether or not our facility usage plan that we presented to you aligns with that. So I'll pause a minute and see what thoughts you might have.
I would give a little bit of history on the high school facilities. When that facility was first built, we wanted to protect the fields for a period of time. Whether that time has passed or not, I'm not necessarily the one to answer that, but that was the intent originally of why that was not included.
This is a really broad scope. I mean, how many years ago did we have a church meeting at Prairie Creek?
I think they still do.
I think
Do they still do
meet.
it?
Yeah.
See, was curious if they still did or not.
It stopped during COVID.
It did.
Yeah. So
And then we go all the way over to the rec. I mean, I think there's an opportunity to have some more discussions with the rec about using the fields at the high school. If we got a rec football team, the rec football program wants to have a playoff, 2 games at the high school, why not let them do it? Or if the rec soccer teams want to have a playoff at the end of their season on the high school field. It's 2 games or 3 games, whatever. I don't see where that would be a big issue. So, especially when it's coming out of the same mill levy. It's part of ours. They're part of us. So it'd be a good way to work with the city, I guess. That's just a thought.
I would and I'm not for or against it. It doesn't matter to me if the rec wants to use it, but we would have to revise our current facility use guidelines to somehow include just that group in there. Because if we do add them in to where they're the category they're at, that invites a whole lot of other people in as well. So we could probably do it. I'm not saying we couldn't do it, revise it to where we're just allowing rec to use the facilities, but it would take some time to revise that, what we currently have.
I understand. That makes perfect sense. But the rec is also already using our gyms in their elementary schools. So I don't know quite where that becomes hugely different. You'd have to tell me. I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I mean, all of our facilities are available to them. And matter of fact, the rec used Woodland Spring last year, the football field, and it really worked out well for them. So they've got other opportunities to use all of our other facilities. It's just the high school ones are off limits. Now, whether they want to use that because it has turf, maybe that's the case. I don't know, but everything else is available for them to use. So.
Yeah. There were a couple of things that I don't know. I lost sleep over this, and it may sound silly, but I've lost sleep over a lot of things lately. But a couple of things that kind of, I think just, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I think there's something really special about like when you walk out on that field as a high school athlete for the first time, or keeping that as a special place. It's, you know, those fields are like where the community gathers. It's a special thing that we have going on here. So to have like one playoff game or something like that, I don't think is a big deal, but to just have like teams practicing on them all the time. And then kind of what that leads to a little bit is if, you know, I know we've had some people approach us that would like to use these for their club teams or whatever. And even in one of the letters we received, it specifically mentioned like they would have an advantage when they go to try out for the high school teams. And that just kind of didn't set right for some reason with me. I think that like when you're in the heat with the club teams, you feel like you're doing this thing to put these kids in a better position for a whole high school team. But sometimes it also then to the detriment of another kid kind of doesn't even the playing field. And I think high school sports have always been kind of an equalizer. Everybody's got a fair shot at tryouts and that sort of thing. So that kind of didn't set well with me either. I don't know whether I'm making any sense.
Well said. That's exactly what I was thinking. I felt the same way. That's exactly what I was thinking about that.
I'm hopefully everybody can hear me, but I'm kind of in the same boat with Sharon. I kind of think walking out onto those fields when you're in high schools, that's a step up, and you get that feeling from it. If you were to just minimalize it with, you know, it was part of growing up and you practiced out there, it kind of takes away from that appeal.
Yeah, I'd agree with Sharon. And I think the term or the sentence you had concern about was that first, and the board shall encourage the use of school buildings and school grounds of community groups. And I think Kylie said it very well. We have 5 elementaries, we have 3 middle schools, we have a big high school, we have facilities all over the place. And we do encourage people to use those. I think Sharon's got a great point. That's a very special environment and a special location that people walk out onto that field as a first year high school athlete. That's a big deal. Number one. Number two, how many millions of dollars did we spend on those fields? You remember it was several. $13 million. We want that, from my perspective, we want that field worn out by school district activities. And I think it's important we do that. We have facilities. You look at that high school, it's how old now? Close to 20 years old?
16.
16 years old. It still looks brand new. And the reason we have that is because the students that go there take really good care of it. They take pride in the building. They take the staff and teachers take pride in what they're doing, and that maintains that environment. It maintains the maintenance of that building. The same kind of thought process, from my perspective, should be transferred into those fields as well, that they're unique, they're special, and they deserve to be highly maintained and focused on just school district activities. There are many, many, many other facilities we have around the district, which we do encourage people to use. And so, at least in my interpretation of our policy, we're in alignment because of all of the other facilities.
I don't want to cut off discussion, but my recommendation, just based on what I'm hearing tonight, would be that we make the minor changes that were requested at the last meeting. We bring it back to you at the next meeting for action. There still will be some things to work out with the rec, and I hear there may be some openness to the rec having a little bit more access. I think that's something we can work through as we work through their agreement and bring back any changes that are needed at that point. But asking for the board to go ahead and take action at the next meeting would give us a working facility plan to utilize this school year. And that way patrons that are already reaching out, wanting to use different facilities, we would be working off the most current. But that would be my thoughts. I'd be open to if there's other ideas from the board.
So I have one comment. I think those sentiments are really special, but it's almost like we're saying the opposite of what that sentimental feel is when we say, but the rec kids can use it, but our youth can use it for camps, so they're already on those fields. So if our hope is to keep those fields sacred for when you're stepping out there as a high school player, let's do that and limit the use to just high school games and high school practice. I would like to see our whole community be able to use it, all of our taxpayers who paid for it and have been paying for it for 20 years. So I know that upkeep is a lot. And I wonder that same question that Nels asked. When is that time that we say, okay, we've had it long enough, the couch cover can come off and everyone can sit down? When is that?
I don't know. It's not for me to answer. I think that's
How old's that
the
field?
board decision.
Remember? I don't remember when we built that.
The fields were new in 2018, fall of 2018.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
so they're fairly new. And I'm sorry, I thought you said that it came with the bond and.
No,
The high school was built.
high school.
And then they
you.
played games and stuff at the fields
Okay.
in town
So it is fairly new, but maybe that's something we think about and say what is that day that we open those doors?
What assumed life is 20 years? Is that
20 or
pretty-
25?
It's 20 or 25?
Yeah.
So I don't know, at halfway point, maybe the news worn off at that
I think
point.
it's 10.
I think it's 10 years
10 to 15.
for turf,
10 years of turf.
for the turf useful life. Of course, we could carry that much farther. Tim, is that right?
Mhm. Yeah, I know the track at the Spring Hill Middle School was 20 years old, and that was way beyond. We were able to, through maintenance and care, we were able to make it last a lot longer.
I still think there's a difference between a camp once a year or a game, a championship game, and a team just practicing on a weekly or bi-weekly or 3 times a week basis and just being out there all the time on it.
Dr. Luttrell and I actually had a opportunity here last week to meet with the ATG company, which is the ones that put that turf in and stuff. And so those were some of the questions we were asking about it. And average in the turf business is 8 to 10 years on the life of turf. He was out here and photographed it and walked it and did some stuff with it. And he said he sees us getting well over the average on that field because of the way it's been maintained and the use that it's had and stuff like that. He also cautioned us, we talked about, well, what about other places that are using outside groups and not, he said, it's across the board everywhere. He says, when you increase the use of it, you drastically will have the wear of it go down. It's going to lose a lot of life because number one, your outside groups don't care about it like your coaches do. One of the things people wouldn't think about, sunflower seeds. Sunflower seeds are one of the worst things you can have on artificial turf. It's funny if you go to some of the professional baseball fields where they still have turf. Not very many of them do anymore, but you'll see the guys out there right after a game picking up those sunflower seeds off the artificial turf because it is a very detrimental to it because of the sharp edges on them and stuff and cut the fibers on them and stuff like that. Gum that kids have and stuff. Our coaches are pretty diligent about that kind of stuff. So he said, again, he said, it's all over the board what all different places do. There's not a right or wrong answer from my standpoint. you know, it's kind of a board decision. What do you want to get out of the field? How long do we want it to last? The more we use it just for school, the longer it could last. You know, and I don't know, Dr. Luttrell, I mean, didn't you feel like that Joe thought we could get 12 to 15 years out of it the way it was wearing right now? So, and the maintenance we do on it annually as well. So, I mean, more than annual, but we have a special guy that comes in and vacuums it and fluffs it up and takes the right equipment to go across it and keep it in pristine shape. We also do the drop test on it to make sure that it's still meeting all the standards for concussion protocol as well. So, you know, so a lot goes into those fields. So.
Do they talk about how much the sun damages it? Or just where? Is it completely two different things?
The sun can damage it. He didn't say a lot about it, but from previous conversations, the sun can damage. And again, Joe's a salesman that we visited with, so they have the best product out there.
Sure.
I don't know too many salesmen that don't sell the best product out there. He said they have less, you know, damage than a lot of other guys do from the sunlight. We're a unique field because we have the infill material that we have. We don't have the crumb rubber. The crumb rubber will give you about 20 degrees hotter fields than what ours are. And therefore, the lower you can keep the temperature of the field, the less damage from the heat that happens too. So we also have a Brock pad underneath it, which is also cushioning underneath it. So we're a little different field than your average field. So, and he talked about that, even though they don't put in a lot of fields like ours. They're putting in more with the natural infill than what they used to, but to go the next layer and put that Brock pad underneath is even another additional, you know. And so, you know, if you get somebody out there that wants to run around and decides they're going to pull their pickup out on it, or there's an injury and you don't have the district staff there to make sure that the ambulance doesn't drive all the way out through the middle of the field and you damage the pad that's underneath it, because it is something that could break under the right conditions if you run something real heavy. I mean, so there's huge amounts of variables on it, you know, for using it.
So is there a long-term plan for replacement? I know that Doug talked about in our budget workshop today, looking out 5, 10, 15 years. What is the plan for these facilities now?
I am currently working on a 5-year facilities plan for every school. So that's part of our strategic planning. That's something I'll be working on. So that will be included in that. So
the cost right now is a little over $1 million just for the top turf, to replace the turf alone. That doesn't include how much they'd have to do on infill, or if there's any other pad to be replaced underneath. The pad should be reusable for one cycle of turf replacement that's underneath it. But again, when they peel it up, if there's some broken ones, you'd have to replace those as well. So, you know, and that was today's dollars. Who knows what tomorrow will bring in today's, what can happen.
Well, thank you. I know I'm one of 7 people up here, and so I think my opinion is probably a little different than some others, but I would love to see a policy that's that lets everybody use it or holds it sacred to just our high school athletes.
I think that's the way it is right now.
Yeah. Well, and that was the reminder I was going to put, is the recommendation that you had in front of you and we'll bring back to you would keep it that way, and allow us to have more conversations with the rec and Mr. Goheen and bring that back to the board when we get more information.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So you can bring it back as an action item on our next agenda.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our next discussion item is the site council positions for 2023-2024 school year.
And again, this is just more for your information. Back when we did the reorganization meeting, each of you kind of spoke as to which particular site council you would like to be a part of. throughout the school year. We took that, and then each principal then also chooses both, group of parents and staff to join each Board of Education member for that particular site council, and then that comprises the total school site council. So what I just put there for your own benefit, so you would know, again, which site council you are part of, along with, so you could just kind of know what other individuals will be part of that group as well. There's no action needed on that at this time. And I think we did include even in that, just for your benefit, we also, the site councils were part of a state statute in the state of Kansas. And so we just, again, printed that statute out that and highlighted the key part of it, as well as placing the entire statute as a PDF. But again, just more information for you.
Very good. So have a look. Make sure you haven't overcommitted or undercommitted. And we can work out any changes that we need to do in the interim. All right, moving on to our action item, which is the notice of hearing and notice of revenue neutral hearing. Dr. Luttrell.
Okay, and as Mr. Swin, did a great job earlier of outlining during the budget hearing, our what we'll be doing at our actual hearing where people can come and speak public comment on September 11th. To be able to do that, we have to formally publish the notice in the paper. And so actually there's two things that we need your permission and approval tonight. And that is basically, all it is doing is just simply allowing the district to publish in the Miami Republic paper when that hearing will be, as well as the revenue neutral resolution as well. And Mr. Swin, if you want anything else, but I mean, it's pretty just allowing it to go in the paper. It's not setting any rate whatsoever. It's just letting people know that on the 11th, they'll have an opportunity to come ask questions and state any comments that they would like.
The only key piece I would add, I think I said earlier, is that the levy that goes in the paper, when you meet and adopt the budget on 9/11, you can't go higher than that. Can't go higher than but you could go lower. I won't recommend that, but you could. So, you're going to have a hearing and people are going to come potentially and speak. And if you feel led to go lower, you could. But it sets the cap as far as how high you can go. So the 61.978, I think, is the 67.198 is the lid that you can go. So it is scheduled to be published this Wednesday in the paper. I've got that lined up. And then there's a 10-day waiting period to when you can have your actual hearing. So it would meet the requirement and we would have our hearing on 9/11.
Mr. President, I move we approve the notice of hearing and the revenue neutral hearing scheduled for September 11th at 6:15 p.m.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the notice of hearing and the notice of revenue neutral hearing as presented. Any final questions or comments or discussion?
Just have a quick comment. It's nice to see we paid off $10 million in debt in the last 3 years. It's at the bottom of the form.
Yeah, and that 10 million in interest that we've saved through refinancing is kind of a nice talking point.
Right on.
Any other comments or discussion? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Luttrell?
Yes, just a few items. First of all, while it remains very fluid, I want to give you a little enrollment update. Again, our enrollment will not be really official of what we have. We always do that on count day, which is around September mid-September, around September 20th. So we've got a ways to go on that, but I've been following that pretty closely every day. And I am happy to say that right now, as of late last week, the formal numbers that we had pre-K, about 129 total students that were enrolled. Grades kindergarten through 5, we had right at 1,868 students that were enrolled. At our 3 middle schools, again, which we knew we have plenty of room for growth there. We were right at 911 students for grades 6 through 8 between those 3 middle schools. It's not distributed quite evenly though, but it's still, pretty good mix. And then our high school, for the first time, even though they had been in the past projected and it seemed like they might started over 1,000 students, always kind of fell a little short, 970, 960, 980. Well, this year, they have been able to not only be projected to be over 1,000, but thus far they have been at that of kids present and enrolled in that, well into that 1,050 range, give or take, a dozen one way or the other, which is an encouraging sign. Now we're still going to have some ins and outs. There's still, well, I want to, I'm as talking with Mr. Elliott last week, we're kind of hedging a little bit. We think we'll probably wind up by the time the dust settles with about 25 students less than where we were at now. But if you go with what we currently have on our rolls, we have right at, not counting any of the virtual students, just what we have pre-K through grade 12, right at 3,965. Now, again, that was late last week. Informally, this morning when I checked, we were maybe down about 2 or 3 more students, but so we're still really good. What the really good thing is, you remember last year I was up here and I was like, new, but I was like, we're up, but it's not near what we were projected to be with our demographic, what our demographer Rob had predicted. We were about half of that. And as you remember, Rob came in, gave us revised numbers in January. And what's crazy is those demographers are so precise with his revised formulas and the new criteria he had. The number that he has, revised number that he forecast for us this year was 3,966. And you can see officially right now on the books, even though it's not going to probably shape out, is 3,965. So again, we look at that data and it can be overwhelming and all the variables they use, but they got their formulas are pretty precise. So that was good to see. Right now, I'm thinking again, as Mr. Schwinn said earlier, it's not going to be set in stone, but we could be, compared to last year, we could be anywhere from 150, up 150 additional students from where we were last year to as many as, if the dice really fell correctly, 180, 190. Okay. So again, good to see. So that's some enrollment. We also told you last meeting, I told you about the group same attorney group that did the nationwide class action on the Jewel class action lawsuit that was settled, that we did, we're a part of and will be receiving some funds on. That same group is wanting to possibly file a class action suit against some of the major social media companies. And I provided you some information that I had from them and was asked you all to look that over. And then if you want it I could definitely get with Mr. Goheen, who could get this group to come in maybe at one of our upcoming meetings and, give a brief presentation as to, how they're going to approach this, why they think their chances might be good for pursuing this. And if you'd like that, just let me know, direct me with that, and I'll try to get that set up. I do know there have been at least one, if not 2 other Johnson County schools that have already had the presentation, have already passed a resolution to throw their name in and be a part of it. they decide they have enough schools nationwide to do that, but there's nothing has been determined yet. They're still trying to sell it to school districts. I talked to our board leadership the other day. We do have every fifth Monday, in addition to our 2 meetings a month, we have a work session. Our next fifth Monday work session would be Monday, October the 30th. I do believe there's a lot of topics we could tackle. So I just wanted to kind of put that out as you set your calendar and make sure you keep that open. But we can also between now and then be thinking about specifically, if you have a topic, we want to be pretty strategic and focused on what we discuss and try to get some brainstorming on. And so, we have some ideas possible that we could have, but if you've got ideas, you might want to, again, let our board leadership, President Updike, as well as Director Mitchell. I know Director Meese has been joining us for several of our agenda reviews as well. And again, that on the agenda, when it comes to the agenda review, like we started last year, it's typically the board leadership, president or vice president. We try to meet to review the agenda, but we want to have other people be part of that as well. And so there is out there in the library, in the Google Doc, that we can share that if you ever want, any of you as a board member want to be a part of that agenda review, if your schedule will allow, even though we sometimes don't really get the exact time on them and nailed down to maybe the day before, but we can, you're always welcome to sign up. The key is we just got to make sure we do not have at any time more than 3, because if we had 4 that attended the agenda review, it would constitute an actual meeting, and assistant clerk Candy would not like that. So just keep that in your mind. Like I said, but we do plan a work session on the 30th. I'm looking forward to that. I have been offered the opportunity. We do have a board election coming up in November. We have 7 candidates. I have extended to each of them an opportunity, if they so desire, to meet with me, just to give them, so I could provide them, just, hey, what are some of the hot topics that we got to keep at our forefront? What are some of the opportunities that we'll be dealing with and having discussion out in the coming weeks? I've had many of them taken advantage of that, and those discussions have gone well. Our fall sports are underway. Last week was brutal. Most every team that has outdoors, whether it be tennis, football, cross country, they all moved their practices indoors or went to the very early morning hours. And even then it was still hot. But again, I know this week late, in fact, this last Saturday, we actually had some competitions already. I know our girls tennis at the high school already had a competition over the weekend. And then this week, I know middle school football plays, soccer is going to be starting up. We actually host our first football game at the height varsity level this Friday night. We'll be hosting Bonner Springs for that. So come out. Be a lot of opportunities for fall sports, and that will transition into the winter and into the spring. But again, it's much more comfortable this week. I said earlier in my good news recognitions report, and as we got ready for calling them to talk, was that, all of our stakeholders last week, parents, students, but our staff, principals, everybody did a super job battling through those elements. It was tough. I've been at it a long time, and that was one of the most intense durations of heat with the heat index that I can recall. The next big thing on the horizon this week that we're prepared for is this Wednesday will be our first Late Start Wednesday collaboration. First time, even though we've had late starts in the past, we also had collaboration Wednesdays where we had late start for secondary and an early dismissal for the elementary. This year, starting Wednesday, all of our grade levels, K through 12, will be doing the late start. We're in the morning, everything, bus routes will run 1 hour late. If you're normally picked up at 7 a.m., you'd be picked up at 8 a.m. If your school day is used to starting at 8:05, it'll be 9:05. But again, we're going to move that collaboration time. We have really did an extensive job throughout sending communications to our parents, We've asked our principals to also be repeatedly conveying that. Dr. Villarreal and his staff have put out talking points. We've also worked very closely with our Y-Care to make sure that we've got an idea as to how many students are going to need to be taken advantage of, an earlier drop-off time. And like I said, but that starts up this Wednesday. And again, it will take, undoubtedly, there will be some kinks that'll have to be probably ironed out. But I do think that once we give it a few weeks, things will fall into place and it will become routine. Because again, I've said them many times, I am a firm believer in the late start Wednesdays and the PLCs. When they're implemented correctly over time, they do have an impact on student learning. And as you saw last year, when we did our data presentation, you saw when you take and look at our brick and mortar students, the increases they had made on the state assessments. Well, whenever Dr. Smith brings that back to you in a couple months, once the report cards are official, you're going to be even more shocked and surprised this year at the data that you're going to see. It's really incredible. And I say that is partly due to big emphasis having that time for our staff to come together and focus solely on student learning. And now having our whole staff being able to come together to do not only with each other, but also do it across buildings, as well as our vertical teams as well. It's just going to even be huger and pay off dividends at a greater level in the days to come. So we're looking forward to that, but that starts up this Wednesday. That's my superintendent's report.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Looking forward to this year.